Repeat this to yourself every morning until it becomes true. That's the title of the next set of notes. Repeat this to yourself every morning until it becomes true. Here's what it says. If you're ready, it says words. That's it. End of notes. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that's it? That's the lesson? Words? Yes, that's the lesson. And I want to tell you something. Some of the most important lessons in life fit on a single line. And some of the most dangerous mistakes a person can make fit on a single line too. The difference is in which line you keep repeating. Words. If there's one thing in life worth learning to use well, really well, it's got to be it. The words you say to yourself, not the words you say to your boss, not the words you say at dinner, not even the words you say in prayer, though those matter too. I'm talking about the words that come before all of that. The words that show up before your feet hit the floor. The words that greet you before the coffee is made, before the phone is checked, before the world has a single chance to tell you who you are. Those words. That's what we're going to talk about today. See, most people never think about this. They wake up. The thoughts just come. They don't choose them. They don't select them. They don't curate them like a gardener tends a garden. They just receive whatever shows up at the door of their mind and they let it in. And I want to suggest something. That's a poor way to start a day. A very poor way. Because here's what I've learned after years of studying successful people and unsuccessful people, and I've studied both very carefully. The difference isn't always talent. Isn't always education. Isn't always opportunity, though opportunity matters. A lot of it, a remarkable amount of it, comes down to what a person says to themselves. Every single morning, the person who wakes up and says, I am behind, I am tired, nothing ever works out. Today is going to be hard. That person is not predicting their day. They are designing it. And the person who wakes up and says, I am capable, I am learning, I am getting better. Today I will find one thing to do well. That person is not being naive. They are also designing their day. Two people, same morning, same alarm clock, same sun coming through the same kind of window. Completely different lives because of words. That's what we're going to get into today. And I want you to take notes. Not because I'll ask you later, but because the act of writing something down is itself a kind of asking. And asking, as you know, if you've studied this at all, is the beginning of receiving. Now let me give you a picture. You have a garden, beautiful piece of land, rich soil, good sunlight. Everything a plant needs to grow is right there in that ground. Now here's the thing about a garden. The soil doesn't care what you plant. You plant tomatoes, it grows tomatoes. You plant weeds, it grows weeds. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, are you sure about this? It just grows what you put in it. With the same dedication, the same faithfulness, the same quiet, relentless effort. The mind works the same way. You plant, I am a failure, and the mind grows that. Not because it wants to hurt you, because that's what it was given to grow. You plant, I am capable of more than I have shown, and the mind grows that too. With just as much faithfulness, just as much dedication. The mind doesn't evaluate the seed, it just cultivates it. Now here's the question worth asking this morning. What have you been planting? Not last year, not in the past, right now, this week, this morning before you got out of bed. What seeds did you drop into that soil? I'm not asking to make you feel bad. I'm asking because the answer to that question is the most honest picture of your future that exists. Not your bank account, not your resume, not your connections or your credentials. Your inner conversation is your forecast. And the good news, and there is very good news here, is that you can change the conversation anytime you decide to. Not next year. Not when things get better. Not when you feel more confident or more rested or more ready. any morning, starting tomorrow morning if you want. That's the power we're talking about today. Now let me give you another picture, because pictures are how ideas stick. You've seen a river, I'm sure. A river cuts through stone, not by force, but by repetition. The same water running the same path day after day, year after year, century after century, until one day you look at the landscape and there's a canyon there, half a mile deep, cut by water. That's what words do to the mind. The words you repeat, the thoughts you return to, morning after morning, they cut grooves. Channels, pathways that the mind begins to travel automatically. Some people have deep channels of doubt, deep channels of fear, deep channels of I can't, I'm not enough, I've already tried and failed. Those channels didn't form overnight. They formed over years of repetition, years of waking up and letting the wrong water run through. And I want to be compassionate about this, because most people didn't choose those channels deliberately. Life put them there. Difficult years put them there. People who should have encouraged you but criticized, instead they put them there. Disappointments, setbacks, seasons of struggle that lasted longer than seemed fair, all of that carved channels in the landscape of the mind. I understand that. But here's what I also understand. You can dig new channels. It takes time. It takes repetition. It takes showing up every morning and running new water through new ground. But it works. I have seen it work in people who had every reason to believe it couldn't work for them. That's the miracle of the human mind. It can be recarved, not overnight, but surely, steadily, morning by morning, one new word at a time. Now, before we get to the specific words I want to give you, and I will give you specific words, don't worry, let me address something. Because somebody out there is already thinking, I've heard this before, positive thinking. Affirmations, I tried it once, it didn't work. Fair enough, let's talk about that. There are 3 reasons most people try this and quit. Here's reason number 1. They start with words that are too big. They wake up on Monday morning, stand in front of the mirror and say, I am a millionaire. I am incredibly successful. Everything in my life is perfect and abundant and overflowing with joy. And the mind says, no, you're not. Because the mind has evidence. It has a bank statement. It has a memory of last Tuesday. It knows things. And when you ask it to believe something that is completely at odds with its current evidence, it resists. Hard, that's not a flaw in you. That's the mind doing its job. The mind is a scientist. It respects evidence. So we don't start with what we want to be eventually. We start with what we are choosing to become. We start with direction, not destination. Not I am a millionaire. I am becoming a person who makes wise financial decisions every day. The mind can accept that. It doesn't have to check a bank balance to evaluate it. It just has to look at today. And today, you can make one wise financial decision. And that's enough to make the sentence true. You start where you are, not where you wish you were. Here's reason number 2 that people quit. They do it for a week and look for visible results. And I want to address this carefully, because I understand the frustration. You've been doing the work, getting up early, saying the words, trying to believe them. And you look at your life on day 8 and it looks exactly like it did on day 1. Same apartment, same bank account, same job, same problems. And something in you says, see, doesn't work. But here's what I want you to understand. The farmer who plants in spring does not see anything on day 8. Not a single green shoot, not even a hint. The ground looks exactly the same as it did before he planted. A stranger walking by would see nothing, would assume nothing was happening. But beneath the surface, in the dark, in the quiet, in the hidden places where growth always begins, before it becomes visible, something is happening. The seed is cracked open. The root is reaching. The first tender thread of life is making its way toward the light. You just can't see it yet. The words you say to yourself every morning are seeds. They don't produce fruit in 8 days. They produce fruit in their season. And their season comes if only if you keep planting. The farmer who digs the seed up on day 8 to check on it doesn't get a harvest. Don't be that farmer. Here's reason number 3, and this one is the most important. Most people say the words, but they don't mean them. They go through the motions. They say the sentence. But while the mouth is saying, I am capable and growing, the mind is quietly saying, no, you're not. And the doubt is louder than the declaration. Now, here's the nuance I want you to catch. That's okay in the beginning. You don't have to believe the words completely on day 1. You just have to say them. That's the whole job on day 1. Just say them. Somewhere around day 12 or 15, something shifts. The words start to feel slightly less strange, slightly less like a lie, slightly more like a possibility. And somewhere around day 30, they start to feel like yours. And somewhere after that, I can't tell you exactly when, because it's different for every person. You stop saying them as an exercise. You just think them automatically, because they have become the natural voice of your mind. That's when everything changes, not when you start, when the words become automatic. So the job is not to believe them perfectly. The job is to repeat them persistently until the repetition does the believing for you. Now, let me give you the words, and I want you to write these down, not type them. Write them with your hand on actual paper, because the physical act of writing engages the mind differently than typing. When you write something by hand, you slow down. You feel the words. You give them weight. These are not affirmations. I want to be clear about that. Affirmations, as they are typically taught, are wishful declarations about a future state that doesn't exist yet. What I'm giving you are identity statements. Declarations not about where you are going, but about who you are choosing to be. Starting today, the distinction matters because the mind accepts identity. It resists fantasy. Ready? Here's the first one. Number 1, I am the kind of person who does what I say I will do. Simple. 5 words at the core. I do what I say. Now, you may not have been that person perfectly in the past. Most of us haven't. Most of us have made promises to ourselves that we didn't keep. Commitments we intended to honor and didn't. Goals we set and quietly abandoned when they got difficult. That's history. History is real, but history is not destiny. When you say, I am the kind of person who does what I say I will do, you are not denying your history. You are declaring your direction. You are telling the mind, this is who we are becoming. This is who we are deciding to be. Starting with the very next promise I make to myself. And starting with the small ones. Don't start with the big ones. Start with, I said I would get up at 6. I got up at 6. That's it. That's a complete success. That's the kind of person you said you were. And you were. Stack those up. Day after day. One kept promise at a time. And watch what happens to your relationship with yourself. Because here's the truth about confidence. Real confidence, not the performance of confidence, but the actual felt sense of capability and self-trust that comes from one place. It comes from keeping the promises you made to yourself when no one was watching. Every kept promise is a deposit. Every broken promise is a withdrawal. And the balance of that account is what you feel when you look in the mirror in the morning. Say the words. Then keep one small promise today. That's the whole job. Here's number 2. I am getting better every single day. Not I am the best. Not I am already where I want to be. Not some declaration that strains against evidence. Just I am getting better. every day. Measurably, reliably, incrementally better. Now let me tell you why this one is so powerful. Most people have an unconscious belief that who they are today is essentially fixed. That their intelligence, their ability, their capacity for growth has a ceiling somewhere not far above where they currently stand. And they live within that ceiling. They stop reaching when they think they've hit it. But here's what I've seen in 40 years of watching people grow and people stagnate. The ceiling is almost always a story, not a fact. People who believed they had no ability to learn languages learned languages. In their 50s, in their 60s, people who believed they had no head for business built remarkable enterprises late in life. People who believed they were too damaged, too set, too far behind to change, changed when they changed the story first. I am getting better every single day is not about speed. It's not about comparing yourself to someone else. It's not a competition. It's a commitment to the direction of travel. Better than I was yesterday. Not by much, not by dramatic leaps, just by the width of one honest effort, one book read, one thing practiced, one conversation engaged more thoughtfully. That's enough. 1 degree of better every day is a revolution over the course of a year. The water that carves the canyon doesn't rush. It flows consistently in one direction. That's all it does. Say the words. Then get 1 degree better today. Here's number 3. I have something valuable to give to the world, and I will find a way to give it. Now this one requires a little more faith than the first two. I'll grant you that. Because there are people listening right now who genuinely do not believe this about themselves, who have been told directly or indirectly that they don't have much to offer, that they're ordinary, that there's nothing in them that the world particularly needs. And I want to talk to those people for a moment. Here's what I know about extraordinary people. Not famous people, extraordinary people. The quiet ones who live remarkable lives without the world necessarily noticing. Every single one of them, without exception, went through a period when they didn't know what their value was, when they couldn't clearly see what they had to offer, when the gap between who they were and who they sensed they could be felt impossibly wide. The ones who crossed that gap did something specific. They didn't wait to discover their value before they started giving. They gave what they had, however small, however uncertain. They helped someone with whatever ability they currently possessed. They contributed in whatever room they happened to be in. They showed up and offered what they had, not what they wished they had, and they did it consistently. And something remarkable happened. The giving revealed the value. You don't find your purpose by thinking about it. You find it by acting, by moving, by putting yourself into the current and letting the current show you where you belong. So the sentence isn't, I know exactly what I have to offer and I'm already giving it perfectly. It's, I have something valuable to give and I will find a way to give it. The finding happens in the doing. Say the words. Then do one thing today that gives something, however small, to someone else. Here's number 4. I am not behind. I am exactly where my choices have brought me. And I am making better choices starting now. This one requires some courage to say, because part of it requires taking responsibility. And taking responsibility, real, honest, undefended responsibility, is one of the harder things a person can do. It's easier to say the economy did this, my upbringing did this, the circumstances did this, other people did this. Those things are not entirely false. The world is not fair. Circumstances are real. Advantages and disadvantages are real. But I've observed something over many years. The people who spend their energy explaining how they got here rarely get anywhere else. The people who accept where they are own the choices that brought them here and then make better choices starting today. They move. There's a story about a man who spent his first 20 years blaming everyone and everything for his situation. Plenty to blame, genuinely, legitimately plenty. Bad breaks, hard seasons, people who let him down. And one day someone asked him a question. Just one question. How's that working for you? He thought about it. Not well, he said. Then what would happen, the person said, if you stopped spending your energy on the explanation and started spending it on the next choice? He tried it. Just as an experiment. Just for 90 days. You can always go back to the old ways. Just try it for 90 days. And in those 90 days, he moved further than he had moved in the previous 10 years. Not because the circumstances changed. Because he changed. The sentence doesn't ask you to pretend your past was easy. It asks you to stop letting your past write your future. Say the words, then make one better choice today than you made yesterday. Here is number 5. And this one is my favorite. I am worthy of the life I am building. Write that one slowly. I am worthy of the life I am building now. Here's why this one matters so much. And why most people, even people who are working hard, taking the right steps, doing everything they should be doing, still quietly sabotage themselves. They don't believe they deserve it. Somewhere deep down, below the goals and the plans and the productivity systems, there's a voice that says, people like you don't get to have that. You're too flawed, too far behind, too ordinary, too broken in some specific way that you can't quite name, but you've always sensed. And that voice, when unaddressed, will do something very specific. It will arrange circumstances to confirm itself. You'll get close to the goal and find a reason to abandon it. You'll almost close the deal and say something to blow it. You'll build something good and find a way to undermine it. Not consciously, not deliberately. But the mind creates what it believes. And if it believes at the deepest level that you don't deserve the thing you're building, it will protect you from having it. The declaration, I am worthy of the life I am building, is medicine for that. It doesn't require you to be perfect. It doesn't require you to have earned it yet. It requires only that you acknowledge your own worth as a person, not as a performer, not as a producer, not as a net positive to society, as a person. That worth doesn't need to be earned. It is. It was. It will be. Say those words every morning until the part of you that doubts them is quieter than the part of you that knows them. Now let me put all of this together, because I want you to see not just the individual pieces, but the whole picture. Here's what you're doing when you say these words every morning. You are making a deposit. One deposit. That's it. Small, invisible, but real. And here's what I've learned about deposits, whether you're talking about money or relationships or character or the garden of the mind. The value is not in any single deposit. The value is in the compounding. $1 a day sounds like nothing, but compounded over 30 years at a decent rate and it becomes a fortune. Not because any single dollar was remarkable, because the system was reliable. Words work the same way. One morning of I am capable and growing changes very little. 10 mornings changes a little more. 30 mornings and you'll notice something. A slight but unmistakable shift in how you feel when you walk into a room. In how quickly you recover from a setback. In how much space the doubt has in your mind compared to the confidence. 90 mornings. And the people around you will notice. Not because you told them what you were doing, because something in the way you carry yourself has changed. The posture, the voice, the willingness to try things you previously avoided, A year and you will barely recognize the person who started the experiment. Not because anything dramatic happened, because 1 degree of change applied consistently over 365 days is not 1 degree of change. It is a completely different direction. A plane that departs New York heading 1 degree south of its intended course doesn't land in a slightly different part of Los Angeles. It lands in a completely different country. 1 degree, applied consistently. That's the power we're talking about. And your words are the instrument that sets the degree. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. I won't use his name not because it matters, but because you know this man. You've met him. He might even live in your house. He was, by any external measure, stuck average income. Average results. Average everything, he thought. He'd tried the books. He'd tried the seminars. He'd tried motivation speeches like this one and felt the fire for a few days and then watched it die like every fire does when it isn't fed. And one day he told me, I think I'm just not one of those people. Some people have it. I don't have it. I've made my peace with ordinary. I listened to him. And then I asked him one question. What do you say to yourself in the morning? He looked at me like that was the strangest question he'd ever been asked. I don't know, he said. Whatever comes. Tell me, I said. Just the first few things. What actually comes? He thought about it. Tired. I think I'm tired. And usually something about whatever went wrong the day before. And probably something about money. And then I think about everything I have to do today and how none of it feels, he stopped. Feels worth it. Usually I nodded. You've been programming a computer, I told him, every single morning for 30 years. And you've been putting in the same program. And you're surprised you're getting the same output. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, so what do I do? Change the program, I said. Not the circumstances, not the job, not the city. Change what you say when you open your eyes in the morning. Change that first. Everything else will follow. He didn't believe me. But he tried it. Because, and this is the beautiful thing about despair, when you're desperate enough, you'll try anything. Even something as simple as changing your words. 90 days later, he called me. He hadn't made $1 million. He hadn't solved all his problems. He hadn't moved to a new city or found a new job or had some dramatic turning point moment. He just said, I feel different. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like something is possible that didn't used to be possible. And I don't know if it's real, but it feels real. That feeling is the seed cracking open. That's the moment just before the green shoot appears. Don't dig it up. Keep watering. Now let me get practical. Because principle without practice is just philosophy. And philosophy is a wonderful thing, but you can't take it to the bank. Here is exactly how I want you to run this experiment. First, decide the night before. Don't try to figure this out in the morning. The morning is already full. The morning has an alarm and a bathroom and coffee and children and the immediate gravity of the day pulling at your ankles from the moment you open your eyes. Don't add decide what to say to myself to that list. The night before tonight, if you're ready, take 10 minutes. Sit quietly. Take out a piece of paper and write down 5 sentences. Your 5 sentences. Not mine, though you can start with mine and adapt them. Sentences that feel true enough to say and ambitious enough to be worth saying. Write them. Put the paper somewhere you'll see it when you wake up. On the nightstand, on the bathroom mirror, on the ceiling above your bed if that's what it takes. Decide the night before, so the morning already knows what to do. Second, say the words before the phone. This is the rule, no exceptions. I know what the phone is. I know what it does. You pick it up in the first 90 seconds of your day, and suddenly you are no longer in your morning. You are in everyone else's morning. You're in the news, in the notifications, in the opinions and the emergencies and the highlights of other people's lives. And your mind, which was just waking up, just opening like a young plant toward the light, is immediately flooded with information that has nothing to do with who you are trying to become. The phone can wait 5 minutes. The world will not collapse in 5 minutes. Your morning is the most valuable real estate of your day. Don't let the first occupant be a notification. Say your words first. Then check the phone. You'll have a cleaner relationship with what you see there if you've already had a conversation with yourself first. Third, say them out loud. I know this feels strange, especially the first few mornings. You're standing in the bathroom or sitting at the edge of the bed talking to yourself, and there's a part of you that feels slightly ridiculous. Good. That means you're doing it for real. The voice, the actual physical sound of your own voice saying these words, adds a dimension that reading silently does not. When you speak, you hear yourself, and there is something powerful about being your own audience, about your mind receiving the words, not just as thoughts, but as sound. Say them out loud, even quietly, even a whisper, but say them with your mouth. And when you say them with the tone of a person who means it. Not a performance, not a shout, just the quiet, firm tone of someone stating a fact they've already decided is true. Not, I am worthy of the life I am building, as a question. I am worthy of the life I am building, as a statement. The period matters. The tone carries the instruction. Your mind takes its cue from how you say things, not just what you say. Fourth, write one of them down every morning. Just one, not all 5. One. Pick the one that feels hardest to believe that day. The one your doubt most wants to argue with. Write it by hand. Slowly. Feel each word. There's a reason we remember things we've written more vividly than things we've only read. The hand is connected to the mind in a different way than the eye. When you write a word, you inhabit it slightly more than when you read it. You are the author of it, not just the recipient. Become the author of your own identity. 1 sentence a day. In your own handwriting. That's a small thing that becomes an enormous thing over time. Fifth, review them at night. Before sleep, which is itself an extraordinary teacher, the mind processes and consolidates during sleep what it encountered during the day. Takes 60 seconds. Read the 5 sentences again, quietly, and ask yourself one question. Did I behave today like the person these sentences describe? Not a perfect person. Not a person who never doubted or slipped or got tired. But in the moments that mattered, did you move in the direction of these sentences? If yes, notice that. Let it register. Don't rush past it looking for what went wrong. Let the small win settle. If no, don't judge. Just note. Tomorrow, in this specific situation, I will choose differently. That's it. No punishment. No spiral. Just a clean note for tomorrow. And then sleep. The mind will work on it while you rest. That's its job. Let it. Now I want to tell you what I've seen. Because I've been in this space, the space of human development, of studying why some people grow and others don't, why some people reach their potential and others carry it to the grave unopened for a long time. And I have seen what happens to people who take their inner conversation seriously. I want to be careful not to oversell this. It is not magic. It is not a shortcut. It does not replace the work, the discipline, the persistence, the willingness to be wrong and try again. But here's what it does. It changes the relationship between effort and identity. For most people, effort is something they apply to external goals. They work hard when they're motivated. They push when the stakes feel high enough. They try when they believe the odds are good enough. But for the person who has rebuilt their inner conversation, who has over months of morning practice rewired the voice that greets them when they open their eyes, effort becomes something different. It becomes expression. They don't work hard because they have to. They work hard because the person they believe themselves to be, the person their morning words have built that person, works hard. That person does what they say. That person gets better every day. That person gives their value to the world. And when who you are and what you do are aligned, when effort is not a burden but an expression of identity, the energy you bring to your life is categorically different. You've met people like this. You've noticed them. They have something that's hard to name. Not talent necessarily, not luck, something else. Something in the quality of their presence, the way they seem to believe in what they're doing, the way they don't seem to be fighting themselves. That's what you're building when you change the morning conversation. You're building a self that you don't have to fight. And I promise you the most exhausting thing in the world is to spend your life at war with your own identity, trying to produce results that your deepest self doesn't believe you deserve. Working toward a life that your inner voice keeps quietly telling you is not for people like you. The truce to peace begins in the morning with 5 sentences said out loud before the phone. That's where it begins. I want to tell you about one more person before we get to the close. A young woman who came to one of my seminars years ago, sat in the 3rd row, took pages of notes, had the look of someone who was genuinely hungry, not for information, but for permission. That's a specific look. I've learned to recognize it. It's not the look of someone who needs to be taught. It's the look of someone who already knows somewhere inside them. They already know what they need to do. They just need someone to tell them it's okay to do it. After the event, she waited until most people had left. And she said something I've thought about many times since. She said, "I understand everything you said today. I've understood it for years. I've read the books. I know the principles. But knowing hasn't been enough. I keep going back to the old voice. How do you make the old voice stop?" I thought about that for a moment. And I said, you don't make it stop. You don't fight it. You don't argue with it. You don't try to prove it wrong. She looked confused. "You just," I said, "speak louder." She stared at me. The old voice won't go silent because you want it to. It has years of practice, decades of repetition. It knows all your weak spots. You will not win an argument with it. But you don't need to win an argument. You just need to speak louder every morning with a new voice. Not arguing, not defending, just speaking. New words, your words, the words of the person you are choosing to be. Eventually, I said, the new voice gets stronger. Not because the old voice got weaker, because you kept speaking. You speak long enough and loud enough and faithfully enough, and one day you notice the old voice is still there, but it's far away, like a radio in the next room. You can hear it if you listen for it, but you're not listening for it anymore. You're busy with your own conversation. She wrote that down. Then she looked up and said, "I can do that." "Yes," I said, "you can." And she did. Now let me talk to you about seasons. Because if you study nature at all, and I think everyone should study nature, it teaches more than most classrooms ever will you learn something essential about the rhythm of growth. There are 4 seasons, and not one of them is optional. You don't get to have spring without winter. You don't get to harvest in autumn without planting in spring. You don't get to enjoy the long golden days of summer without the work of the earlier seasons. The seasons don't ask your permission. They don't care if you're ready. They just come. And the only question is, what do you do when they come? I've met people who have been in winter for years, decades, some of them. Genuine winter cold, dark, difficult, the kind of season where the ground is frozen and nothing seems to grow and the days are short and the nights are very, very long. And here's what I've noticed about the people who make it through winter, who come out the other side into spring. They kept planting. Not outside the ground was frozen, but inside. In the only place where planting is always possible, even in the deepest winter. In their own minds. They kept saying the right words when the wrong words would have been so much easier. They kept showing up for their morning practice when every morning felt like a defeat. They kept their commitments to themselves even when the evidence of progress was invisible. Because they understood something that the people who quit didn't understand. Winter is not the end. Winter is the preparation. The seed that survives winter, the seed that was buried in fall and held through the cold and the dark and the long silence, that seed, when spring comes, produces the strongest plant. Not the seed that only knew warmth, the seed that survived winter. If you are in winter right now, if life is hard and cold and the evidence of your progress is invisible, and the distance between who you are and who you want to be feels impossibly wide, I want to say something to you. Keep planting. Say the words every morning, especially in winter, especially when they feel least true, especially when the doubt is loudest and the faith is quietest. Those are the mornings that matter most. Those are the deposits that compound the hardest. Those are the seeds that when spring comes, and spring always comes, will produce something remarkable. The world never sees the winter planting. The world only sees the spring harvest. But you will know. And what you know about your own faithfulness in the dark seasons, that knowledge becomes a kind of confidence that nothing can take from you. Because you held. When it was hard, you held. When it was cold, you held. When nobody was watching and no one was cheering and the evidence was invisible, you held. And if you held through that, what exactly can stop you now? Let me give you one final picture, and then I'll let you go. You've seen a lighthouse somewhere on a cliff above a dark sea. Here's what I want you to think about. The lighthouse doesn't know who it's helping. It doesn't see the ships. It doesn't receive a report on how many vessels made it safely to harbor because of its light. It doesn't get thanked. It doesn't receive applause. It just shines every night. In all weather, whether the sea is calm or violent, whether ships are passing or none are passing at all, whether anyone is watching or no one is watching, it just shines. And because it shines consistently, reliably, without requiring acknowledgement, ships find their way home. I want you to think of your morning practice as a lighthouse. Not the ships, not the harbor, not the sea, the lighthouse. You may not always see the results of your practice. You may not always know which morning's words made the difference. You may not be able to trace the direct line between what you said to yourself on a Tuesday in February and the opportunity that appeared 3 months later. But the lighthouse doesn't need to trace that line. The lighthouse just needs to shine. Show up. Say the words. Keep your commitment. Be the lighthouse. And the ships, the opportunities, the connections, the growth, the life you are building, they will find their way to you. Not because you chased them, because you became the kind of light they navigate toward. That is the power of a right morning. That is what 5 sentences said faithfully before the phone can build over time. Not a performance, not a highlight reel, a lighthouse. Something that shines regardless of whether anyone is watching. Something that holds its position through every season. Something that helps people find their way home, including yourself. Now I want to spend just a moment on one more group of people. And then we'll close. There are people listening to this today, intelligent, thoughtful, perceptive people who hear everything I've said and think, yes, but you don't know my situation. And they're right. I don't. I don't know how long your winter has been. I don't know what was said to you or done to you or taken from you. I don't know what you've tried before that didn't work, or how many times you got your hopes up and they were disappointed, or how tired you are of being told the answer is just to think differently. I don't know any of that. But I know this. The fact that you are still here, still listening, still considering, still holding the possibility that something could shift, that is not a small thing, that is not nothing, that is everything. Because the people who truly give up don't listen to speeches. They don't sit quietly and consider new ideas. They don't spend time with questions about how to improve their inner conversation. They've already closed the book. They've put the phone down. They've decided. You haven't decided. Not yet. Or you wouldn't still be here. And that means the game is still on. That means there is still a season ahead. That means the morning that changes everything for you, that morning hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. So if you don't believe today, that's all right. Belief is not required to begin. Willingness is required. Just the willingness to try. To say, I don't know if this will work. I don't feel it. I don't see the evidence. But I am going to say the words anyway. 5 sentences tomorrow morning before the phone. That's the whole ask. That's all I'm asking from you today. Not belief, not certainty, not a guarantee that you'll maintain it for 90 days, just tomorrow morning. And if tomorrow works, then the next morning. Just the next morning. One morning at a time. That is how every great thing in human history was built. Not by people who had it all figured out. Not by people who never doubted. Not by people with a perfect plan and unlimited confidence and ideal circumstances. By people who showed up for the next morning. One morning at a time. That's you. If you want it to be. So let me wrap this up. Because I've given you a lot. And I don't want to bury the thing that matters most under the weight of everything else. Here is the thing that matters most. This is not complicated. It is simple. It is not easy. Nothing worth doing is easy, but it is simple. 5 sentences every morning before the phone, said out loud, written once by hand, reviewed before sleep. That's the whole system. And if you do it faithfully, consistently, without skipping because you're tired or because it feels silly or because nothing seems to be changing yet in 90 days, you will be a measurably different person. Not famous, not rich, not problem-free. Different. Different in a way that the people closest to you will notice without being able to name. Different in a way that you will feel in quiet moments in the 2 minutes before a difficult conversation. In the pause before a decision. In the morning when you open your eyes and notice that the first thought is not dread or exhaustion, but something more like readiness. That's what 90 days of right words will give you. Readiness. And from readiness, everything else becomes possible. Just try it for 90 days. You can always go back to the old conversation. The old voice will wait for you. It's patient. It's been there a long time. But just for 90 days, try the new one. 90 mornings. Say the words. Keep one promise. Plant one better seed. Give something small. Accept where you are and choose differently starting now. Tell yourself you are worthy of what you are building. That's 90 mornings. 90 mornings, and somewhere in those 90 mornings, I can't tell you exactly which one, because it's different for every person somewhere in there. The words will stop being words you say and start being words you are. And when that happens, when the identity takes hold and the voice is yours and the morning is yours and the first thought of the day belongs to you and not to the weight of yesterday or the fear of tomorrow, when that morning comes, you'll know. You won't need anyone to tell you. You'll just know. Because the person who wakes up that morning is the person those words were always building. And that person is extraordinary. Not because the world says so, because you decided so. One morning at a time, with 5 sentences, before the phone. The world admires the doers. Go do the work.